All right, I will call the Tuesday, September 24th, 2024 regular council meeting to order and begin with a land acknowledgement that the City of Fort Saskatchewan is located on Treaty 6 territory and Métis Nation of Alberta District 11. We recognize that we stand upon the land that carries the footsteps of many Indigenous peoples, including the Nihilwak, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, Nakota Sioux, and Métis. The city honors the first peoples of this land and is committed to fostering reconciliation through relationship building, knowledge gathering, and education. And just as housekeeping, since we do have people that aren't on staff in our audience, if there is an emergency, we do have emergency exits through the chamber doors and then exit out the front doors of the building to the muster point. If the alarms were to sound, basically just follow the staff and they will make sure they get you to the muster point. Okay, thank you. So with that, with regards to the agenda, there is a request for an item 10.4 to be added to the in-camera. I'm just going to ask if there's any objection to that being added. If there's no objections, then I'll just take it as consent. So that will just be added. Thank you. I will take approval of the September 10th regular council 2024 regular council meeting minutes. Councillor Abatoye, the second, hold it. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I'll make a motion that council approves the September 10th regular council meeting minutes as presented and circulated.
All right, thank you. Are there any errors or omissions? Not seeing any. I will close the motion and call for the vote.
Okay, I'm not signed in. Count me as affirmative, please, Jennifer.
And that is carried unanimously. And with delegations, we only have one item on our agenda, and it will be part of the public hearing for anybody who wishes to speak to the public hearing bylaw C18. During the public hearing, people will have an opportunity at that point in time. So we will begin with our item, bylaw C18-24, point of pins, area structure reading, first reading, and call Taryn Samra and Cherie Shindy. And Craig. So just for everybody's information, it'll be the same process that we used for the last one that will be going to the Edmonton Metropolitan Region. It'll be given first, well, hopefully first reading, and then go into a public hearing, and then following public hearing, then it'll be submitted to the EMRB. So thank you. You can go ahead.
Your Worship, members of council, my name is Craig Thomas, and joining me today is the Manager of Current and Long Range Planning, Cherie Shindy, and our planner, Taryn Samra. Also on standby, we have Grant Schaefer and Janelle Hart, who would be made available if there's any questions relative to their area. I'm going to hand it over to Samra, who's going to walk you through the presentation. We're fairly excited to bring this forward to you today. This is the first area structure plan within the areas that have been annexed by the city a few years ago. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Samra.
Thank you. To begin, in February of 2023, Council authorized the initiation of a new area structure plan for approximately 150 hectares of land located south of West Park neighborhood, west of Highway 21, and east of the North Saskatchewan River. The subject area includes agricultural lands, a portion of the Point of Pins Creek and surrounding riparian lands, a former gravel extraction site, and an established country residential subdivision, the Point of Pins Estates. First, I want to start with an overview of the approval process and the next steps. Currently, we're at the ASP stage. The ASP is developed as per the guidelines of the terms of references for area structure plans and neighborhood structure plans and must align with the municipal development plan. At this stage, the ASP and technical reports are reviewed, and engagement with the public occurs through open houses and online engagement. Once the area structure plan has received third reading, the next step is to create a neighborhood structure plan, which will also be developed as per the terms of reference. The preparation of an NSP will not be permitted unless the ASP has been adopted for the area which the NSP is proposed. Council is the approving authority for NSPs, and after the NSP is approved, redistricting applications are submitted, and once approved by Council, administration can accept subdivision and development applications. The area circled in black is the next step once Council gives third reading for the bylaw for the ASP. Next, I want to discuss the neighborhood concept plan. The ASP envisions the Point-au-Pins area as a predominantly residential neighborhood within the city, designated to accommodate a growing population. At full development, the ASP will accommodate approximately 3,900 residents with 1,600 dwelling units through a variety of housing types such as single-detached, semi-attached, townhouses, and apartments. So now I want to bring attention to the concept plan. First, I want to talk about the orientation of the collector roads. The ASP is designed as a modified grid layout with 2 east-west collector roads and 2 north-south collector roads. Roundabouts are utilized at the intersections of the collector roads to ensure traffic, calming, safety, and efficient movement. The orientation of the collector roads in the ASP is consistent with the MDP as it supports the creation of a modified grid. Second is the type of development along the collector roads. There's a policy within the MDP which is about locating higher density and community services along these collector roads. The purpose is to create an engaging street experience and enabling convenient access to services. This can be seen as the plan is there is a mix of low and medium density along the southern east-west collector road and the 2 north-south collector roads. And there's commercial mixed use and residential mixed use along the 2 north-south collector roads. Third is the neighborhood node. A neighborhood node should include higher density housing choices, commercial opportunities and services, and mixed-use development, and an active gathering place. This can be seen as the purple star on the plan. Adjacent to that neighborhood node is residential mixed use, medium density, and a park site. The vision of the node aligns with the policy within the MDP. Now let's talk about the stormwater management facility, which is in the middle of the plan area. Currently a wetland, it will be transformed into a stormwater management facility, and by doing so, aligns with the MDP, as there is a policy that mentions incorporating established wetlands into the stormwater management facility. Another feature is the existing tree stand in the northeast portion of the plan, which is being preserved through dedication of municipal reserve. The MDP mentions protecting and maintaining existing tree canopy through the urban forest plan. Lastly, the ASP is well connected to the existing neighborhood to the north, the neighborhood node, and to the river valley through mobility network, which is consistent with the MDP. Last is the distribution of parks and open spaces. Parks of various sizes are distributed throughout the plan area, including a future school site along the south end of the plan. The location of the parks is consistent with the MDP, as green spaces are located along collector roads, and the location of the small-scale park sizes are within 5-minute walking distances of residents. A buffer is also included in the plan area to separate the existing Point-au-Pins residential subdivision and the proposed development. The buffer is 10 meters wide, will contain a fence and landscaping features. The buffer is created through dedication of municipal reserve. This slide speaks to the ASP and its conformance with planning documents. The application is the first ASP considered following the adoption of the municipal development plan and is developed through the terms of reference of the area structure plan and neighborhood structure plans. The ASP conforms with the MDP policies and objectives. The ASP is located in an area that is designated as future urban areas in the MDP. Neighborhoods in the future urban areas are designed as a place that meets the diverse needs of its residents and offers a high quality of life. Finally, new area structure plans are required to go through the Regional Evaluation Framework approval process, as this is a new ASP, and an ASP is a statutory planning document. Next, I want to bring your attention to the public hearing process. The public hearing process on the screen is the process that is used for the majority of the planning bylaw applications. As you know, council would give first reading, administration would advertise the public hearing, and at a separate council meeting, the public hearing, second, and third reading is given to the bylaw. However, for applications that require a regional evaluation framework, or REF, a separate process is used by administration. First, the public hearing is advertised, and then first reading and the public hearing are completed at the first council meeting, followed by EMRB review and decision, and finally, second and third reading are completed at a separate council meeting. The purpose of completing the public hearing after first reading is to ensure any necessary changes from the public hearing are captured prior to submitting the REF. Please note that any changes that occur at second and third reading will require a subsequent REF. As mentioned in the previous slide, the public hearing is to occur after first reading. The public hearing was advertised in the Fort Record for 2 consecutive weeks. Notices were mailed out to property owners within the ASP area. Notice of the proposed bylaw was posted on the city's website and social media accounts, and no written responses were received. Before I turn it over to the question slide, I do want to make a note that some of the images used in the ASP are subject to change due to copyright and permissions required. And now at this time, I'd like to answer any questions that council may have for administration.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. So this is for first reading questions. Council, any? Councillor Blizzard?
Yeah, there was a lot of information in this one. I was waiting for your summary because it weighs way too much to absorb. But so when we do something like this, and I'm kind of looking at beyond this even, are we planning for future as the city grows? We keep talking about it's going to be 50,000 in 15 years or 20 years, whatever the time is. Are we planning on bigger areas for future sports fields? So we don't have one here and one there. We have more of like the ball diamonds, like Dow Diamonds, where we might have 3 or 4 soccer fields, or, you know, in the future, arenas, other amenities. You know, we have one splash park. Maybe in 10 years we need another. Are we planning on space for that as we look at some of these?
Through your worship to Councillor Blizzard. So, I mean, this process of going through the area structure plan, it really only considers kind of the area structure plan area. I think what you're referring to is more of a strategic planning approach. So we do have our municipal development plan that was approved in 2021, and it will be we'll go through a process of updating that next year. With that document, it'll probably see some changes in terms of adding new policies based on what we know now as opposed to what we knew 5 or 6 years ago. So it certainly could and probably should include those sorts of things. There might be some policies, and I can't say for sure now, but there may be some policies and directions in terms of more strategic planning from kind of a land use perspective, and how, you know, integrating what other departments do into the planning process.
Yeah, because as we look at, you know, this area, and I get it, we're only looking at this area structure plan, but we need to look at the big picture in the future so that we have in the future some areas.
Yep,
Okay,
it's a valid point.
Okay, thank you. I'm next in the speaking order. Are you able to speak about the open houses, or do you prefer to wait? Did you have involvement in those and have information, or would you prefer me to wait with the developer when they come up?
Your worship, I might be able to answer some questions, but most of the open houses were driven by, or they were completed by the developer and their consultant.
Okay, but planning did attend, and you're kind of what you heard?
That is correct. There is a what we've heard report, which is an appendix of the ASP, and that is right. There were myself and Ms. Shindy, we did attend some of the open houses to answer any questions that residents may have had at that time.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kelly?
Thank you. This is the first time, Mr. Thomas, for this approach where the developer prepares the ASP as opposed to city administration?
Through your worship to Councillor Kelly, yes, that's correct.
And in your opinion, if you can, how did that new process work from your perspective?
Through your worship, Councillor Kelly, I think reasonably well. I think through the process, so from the point where we went to council asking for authorization to proceed, the developer and their consultant basically started the process. So there was quite a bit of back and forth because really our role as administration was to make sure that the public interest is being upheld and the policies that are set out in the MDP are consistently reached within that document. So I would say it was a very collaborative process. It was back and forth. We want to make sure that the ASP is created in accordance with the terms of reference. That's kind of our tool to make sure that the developer does what they're expected to do. And we believe that it went actually quite well. It was interesting because I think that, for the most part, the practice is within the region and within Alberta is that, the process is developer led. And we have to make sure that we have those proper checks and balances in place, which, since this was the first one, I felt pretty confident about it. It was pretty good.
Perfect. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kelly, question, or Councillor Nguyen, questions?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. This might be a little bit more specific, and Grant might have the answer to this one. It's in regards to sanitary infrastructure. So in South Fort, sanitary has been turned over to the City of Fort Saskatchewan. We currently own that infrastructure. There are a lot of off-site force main sanitary gravity force main sanitaries that are going to be crossing the highway in this proposal. This doesn't align with the design brief that was proposed by engineering a couple of years ago. So why are we now supportive of this? Because this can be a significant cost to the city with the proposal as it stands in this ASP.
Your worship, to Councillor Nguyen, so ultimately the ASP does align with the design brief. It will. There is some interim servicing that they found a way to bring across in the meantime until the developments east of the highway reach that point. So in the servicing brief, original servicing brief, all the sanitary flows by gravity to the east and around the city towards the north into the existing siphon. That's still the case. In this case, there will be the developer will have to put in a temporary lift station and pump the sewer from this area through the existing South Fork system on a temporary basis until such time as development to the east occurs, and then they'll have a gravity system stubbed out that will then join that gravity system and continue flowing it east. So there are some temporary measures being put in place, but they are at the cost of the developer until the permanent ones are in place.
Okay, so there's going to be no further cost to the city for these tie-ins then?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, that appears to be all the questions on that. So what is the wish of council? Motion? Go ahead, Councillor Harris.
Just a second, it's just coming up. I would move that council give first reading bylaw C18-24 to adopt the Point of Pins area structure plan.
Okay, thank you. I'll accept that motion. You wish to speak to the motion?
I think it's been pretty well explained and I have no further comments.
Okay, thank you very much. It's open for discussion and debate. Not seeing any. Nothing on close. You're good. I'll close the motion on first reading of bylaw C18-24. Please cast your vote. And that is carried unanimously. So we will go into the public hearing now. And just before I open the public hearing, I always like to talk about what the process is for it. And the process is that once the public hearing is open, administration will do their presentation. Council will ask any questions they have of administration. Following that, I will open the floor for anybody who wishes to speak in favor or opposed to the bylaw. And those people would also be allowed to be asked questions by City Council. Once we have gone through that process, administration would come back and answer any final questions of administration. Then I would close the public hearing. And in this case, that would be it. All right. So with that, I will open the public hearing at 2:20 p.m. So go ahead, Taryn.
Your Worship, so administration does not have any another presentation for the public hearing, but we are available to answer any questions that council may have for administration at this.
Okay, awesome. I'll have you take your seats then, and I will open it up for anybody who wishes to speak in favor or opposed. We do have some who have registered in advance. So Brittany Shuchuk, WSP, and Chuck McNutt, WSP. You're the first two who have registered. Mike Yoakum, you have registered separately, so it's up to you if you want to come after, but you can come and sit there as well. And you do have 5 minutes for your presentation. You have 5 and you have 5. All right.
That's it there.
Good afternoon, Mayor Catcher, Council.
Can you just push your button? There you go.
Thank you. Good
Thank
afternoon,
you.
Mayor Catcher, Council and Admin. I'm Brittany Shuchuk, a senior planner with WSP, and I'm here with my colleagues Chuck McNutt, who's a senior project manager with WSP, and Mike Yoakum, the VP of Operations at Landrex. So we're here to present the Point of Pins area structure plan, and then followed by questions from you. So we'll quickly run through the presentation. This is our contents. I'm not going to read the list because we only have 5 minutes. Okay, purpose and background. So the Point of Pins ASP area is 148 hectares in size, and it's located on the south side of the city of Fort Saskatchewan. Council approved the development of this ASP in February of 2023, and it has been written in alignment with the city's MDP and the EMRB's growth plan. So we're pleased to be at the final stages of the project. This process has been lengthy, but we're very happy to be here with you today. We've been at this process for about 18 months, and through this process, we've made approximately 5 submissions to administration, and each time addressing specific items and working collaboratively to produce the final plan we have here today. So through this 18-month process, the community was provided with 5 opportunities to engage with us in the city, and this included 3 in-person sessions and 2 online sessions. So throughout this process, we put efforts into maintaining relationships with the community, and I had many opportunities of corresponding with them via email throughout the project's process. For the first 3 engagement sessions, we received feedback pertaining to the design of the concept, mostly pertaining to the berm that exists. We'll go over the plan in a few slides, that exists on the east side of Point of Pins Drive. All of the comments we received from the community that could be addressed through this ASP were addressed. We did receive other certain comments from the community, such as to lower the density of the plan area, larger lots, and fence materials. These were not addressed in the ASP as they either do not comply with preceding planning policy or are too detailed for this level of planning. So by the 4th engagement session, we didn't receive any major comments from the community. Okay, so here's our land use concept. We'll quickly run through this. We have the special study area on the west sides in purple. These include lands that are below top of bank and considered the bench land, so are at a lower elevation than the rest of the plan area. Our ASP does not dictate what is happening in this special study area. Those will be subject to future technical studies to determine the area's developability. We have the buffer. So a 10-meter wide buffer has been placed on the east side of Point of Pins Drive to mitigate impacts of future development on these existing lots. This buffer will have a fence and a multi-purpose pathway along it, and it extends to the southern boundary of the plan area to provide mitigation measures to all homes along the drive. It also ends at a cul-de-sac, so there's no through traffic along the drive, which was a comment we received from the community. We have the tree stand in the northeast corner. Again, this will be maintained to preserve some of the plan area's natural features and habitats. We have a right in, right out along Highway 21 in that location. Our commercial site in pink, it's commercial mixed use and will include a combination of residential mixed use development with commercial pad sites, about a 40% residential to 60% commercial split. Again, we have the stormwater pond right in the center. This was reconfigured slightly from the last iteration we presented to you back in June. And we have an all turns access at this point on Highway 21. And the neighborhood node, which Taryn talked about, but again, it's meant to be a walkable neighborhood center and a local destination for residential areas, contains medium density residential as well as mixed use and connections to the nearby open space area. Here we have some of our ASP stats. Really, I only have this up on a slide to convey that the area is 148 hectares in size and 58% of the area is net developable area. And these are our residential stats, which allow us to achieve density of 35 density units per net residential hectare, again, which aligns with the city's MDP and the ERMB's growth plan. Our transportation concept here, again, Taryn mostly explained everything. We do in the highlights from the last time we presented to you, there's 4 royal blue circles at the major intersections within the plan area, and those may be roundabouts depending on future analysis, but that aligns with City of Fort Saskatchewan standards. We have our open space plan, and this provides all residents within the area within close proximity to a park, about a 5-minute walk, and our phasing plan, which is pretty self-explanatory. And next steps, again, as already mentioned, ERB's review and then the second, third reading and formal adoption. And that concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you. You had 2 minutes left.
Oh.
So I will open it up for questions of council if you have any questions. And I did have the one question about your open houses. Do you want to just talk about those and a little more in depth and maybe some of the comments and feedback?
Absolutely. So the first open house was held in the beginning of April in 2023, and this was an open house just for residents of the Point of Pins area. And again, very conceptual, was something conceptual? A very conceptual concept was shown, just kind of like the idea of the plan area, but nothing specific. But we did receive specific comments, and most of those comments were in regards to limiting impacts of the future development to the Point of Pins Drive area residents. So the comments were to do with a buffer and a berm, no through traffic along Point of Pins Drive, and to include a multi-use pathway along the berm.
Yeah, and there was also, an idea to kind of ask the residents how they would prefer the plan to start into the design, whether they wanted to have it become part of the Point of Pins or have Point of Pins separate from this new development. And it was pretty much unanimous that they wanted to remain the way they were and have their existing residents just isolated or remain their own state residential, and to have this new development back onto this. We would either front onto it to include it or back onto it to buffer it, and that was the choice that they made, so that was the direction that we move forward with.
So following that first open house in April, then we came back in December once more design work was done, and that's where we presented a land use concept plan as well as the transportation concepts, the servicing concept, and the open space concept. This open house was advertised to all residents. We sent mail directly to the Point of Pins Drive residents, but the open house was also advertised in the newspaper, so anyone could have joined. And through that open house, we heard some more comments, and they regard visitor parking on Point of Pins Drive. That was a concern when development happens. Some residents were concerned that my road would become more busy and more people would park on it, and with that, more garbage and just more people milling around, which is something that our ASP cannot necessarily control. But again, I think having the Point of Pins Drive ending in a cul-de-sac rather than a through road might help that situation a little bit. And in that first design we presented, our buffer didn't extend to the southern boundary of the study area, and as a result we had comments from that and we fixed that. And again, the last comment on here, we say some residents wanted a fence and pathway along the buffer and some did not. We ended up putting it there, just we felt that it was a good amenity and the fence was protection. But again, there was mixed comments on that.
And I just add one more thing is that some of the residents were kind of concerned at the width of the buffer. They were wanting it to be wider, but once they realized that there was only so much land that we were able to deal with respect to municipal reserve dedication, I think they were fine with the fact that it was going to be wide enough to have a buffer and landscaping and planting and possibly a trail and then a fence on the backside of it. So they seemed to be pleased with that.
And then following that December open house, everything that we presented there, we put online in January to collect some additional feedback in case people weren't able to come to the open house in person. And that was put on SurveyMonkey, I think probably for about 3 weeks or the full month of January. And feedback indicated there that some residents along Point of Pins Drive wished for larger lot sizes in the ASP area. Again, what Chuck said, the buffer could be wider. They thought potentially the proposed density of the ASP area might be too high. And then there could be some traffic and safety issues around one of the intersections at the north of the plan area. But again, with these comments, we have to align with the EMRB growth plans and the MDP's minimum density target. So we're really kind of, we're in a position where we have to maintain a certain level of density in the ASP area, which is what we've done. Then on May 30th, we had our third open house. What we presented there, our land use concept was slightly adjusted, and we didn't receive any additional comments pertaining to the land use concept, so we were fairly satisfied that residents who showed up to the open house were relatively comfortable with the plan. And finally, after we made a few final tweaks of the land use concept, mostly to do with the size and configuration of the stormwater pond, the city put our presentation or our plan online for additional public comment. And the only comments received during that online presentation was to do with wish that some of the residents asked for that fence along the buffer to be constructed of vinyl and not wood, just for longevity and maintenance. Again, something that could be considered in the future, but is inappropriate to include in the ASP at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that's just really important information because you feel the public has had adequate opportunity to have input, correct?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, definitely. We've done quite a bit of engagement both online and in person, and we've gotten some very good positive feedback from them. So
great, thank you, Councillor Nguyen.
Yeah, thanks. One thing I noticed that didn't come up in public engagement was the potential to have sanitary tie-ins for the Point of Pin residents. Now, I believe I saw in the report somewhere that would be at a cost of $10,000 per resident of Point of Pin's estates. Is that something that you'd be willing to front the cost of for those residents come stage 3?
I think that's a Landrex question.
Hello. Through your worship, Councillor Nguyen. Landrex doesn't own that portion of land that backs onto Point of Pins. So we wouldn't be in a position to say that we can tie into that ourselves, but our plan for what we have on our quarter section, we are open to increasing the sizing of the pipes and the infrastructure in order to bring that on. I don't think that that's too much of a cost on a sanitary side. It would just be to facilitate how that first pipe would go through and connect. A lot of the cost is probably going to be on the Point of Pins drive, probably ripping up the road, putting sanitary in. On our side, there's not a whole lot of additional costs that we would incur to do that. But I do believe that administration has had conversations and some more technical stuff on how to bring that in or not in.
Okay, fair enough. So there are, I guess, conversations ongoing about the potential to have that done at the point when sanitary and servicing goes through and adjacent to that road. Is that what I understand?
Yeah, for us, on a sanitary side, there's no real uptick on any of the pipes that we would have to build. So we're open to it on our side, on the developer side. Yep.
Okay, thanks. And other question, there's the fence being proposed at potential berm. Doesn't look like there's going to be much of a berm, but in the 10-meter buffer, at what phase of development would that be expected to go in? I can assume Point of Pin residents, if they're backing on to significant construction, would see that or like to see that go in sooner rather than later. So could that be potentially put in with that buffer and municipal reserve developed with landscaping and the rest of it, like perhaps prior to the commencement of stage 3 or something? Or any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I don't want to speak too much for administration, but I think when they go into zoning and sub conditions, you can put a condition on that says once you do this development, you have to build this fence. I believe, I don't want to speak to that, but there are requirements that administration can put on the developer to have that fence put in prior to development.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Whoops, sorry, I just turned somebody off over there. Councillor Harris.
For as long as I can recall, Point of Pins has existed in that location. Do you have historically reference to when it was first developed as part of a land holding in Strathcona County? I know Councillor Noyan once lived in that area, but I'm just curious how many decades has Point of Pins and the residents therein lived there?
I don't have the details, but I believe the plan is what's the plan? 752 plan? What does it say on the bottom there? Can you read it? Right there. Yeah, it's a 752 plan, so that's 1975.
Okay, and yeah, that seems reasonable. I'm just curious about that. Second question I've got, respecting the special study area, is that the land that's immediately adjacent to, and I recognize that that's something that will happen at some future time, but just looking at it in the overall thing, it's privately owned land. The one right beside the river along the Range Road, potential, whatever it is, Range Road, that's privately owned, but the part right immediately behind the Point of Pins northerly residence, is that privately owned as well?
Yes, it is.
We know that obviously the gravel extraction lands were privately owned at one time and probably still are, but what about that special study area ownership?
That is as well privately owned. North of the green area, you're talking about that triangular?
Yeah, the area that's just south of the dog park road where it comes down and intersects with the...
That is privately owned as well.
Okay, so that would be subject to the landowner, whoever that is, then deciding whether they would want to do a continuing study down in that area. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. That was kind of the purpose of this whole special study area, was because there's challenges to do anything in that area that really are different than the challenges east of Point of Pins. So it makes logical sense to create a logical planning unit, which goes from the highway to the river and, you know, the existing neighborhood and then the south boundary. That's a logical planning unit. But there are the challenges inside of that were such that it really deserves a whole bunch more work before you can decide what's going to go on to it. So that's why it's included in the plan, but it's also why we really haven't explored it too much.
Yeah, so for special study area, it just means nothing's happening right now. It's a kind of parking it, it's in the parking lot until somebody decides to come forward.
That's correct.
And get serious.
Yep.
Okay, good. Everything else is fine. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Blizzard.
So you've talked to the Point of Pins residents. When you look at the buffer zone, is a fence going to be close to their road and then green space that has a pathway, or is the pathway going to be closer to them, the roadway that they already have, and then the fence? And I'm just asking that because, you know, are they happy with that? Would they want the pathway close to them? Because that's still going to bring a ton of people down there.
I don't know.
No, the decision that we made, and we explained this to them, was that the fence would be backing onto the new lots. So there would be the fence and then the buffer, and the walkway would be along the buffer, a pathway, sidewalk, basically.
So would that buffer zone then also have openings in the fence to join into pathways in the rest of the system?
There was 3 access points, I guess. There's one at the middle where the pond is. That's going to be an open access point. And there would be one at the north end. I think there was a walkway that came through and connected. And then the south end, there's an option for a pathway. I think we probably could put it there. You've got a kind of a walkway pathway kind of shown. So there's definitely options, but it's not going to be broken up a lot, but there is pedestrian access in and out.
And the residents are good with that setup? I assume you've kind of explained to them the idea?
We've talked to them. They were at the open houses and I think seemed pretty good with it. So. And
just a piece on that vinyl fence. I don't know if you've seen it, but I've just come across vinyl fences knocked down. They have this, it's called Kool-Aid Man Challenge. But anyway, vinyl fences aren't ideal at the moment, but maybe down the road again. The other question I have is, and I know I brought it up when this was brought to us before, in the northeast corner is the green space trees. And I know I looked at it and questioned, gee, it was designed, I can't remember what it was, commercial space or residential. And it was brought up that, gee, should we be getting rid of that? Then I drove by and I looked at them and I'm wondering, is it worth preserving? Like, did you look at it? Are these, because it looks very shrubby to me I didn't walk through it, but, you know, is that space worth preserving, or is it better use elsewhere to have green space that's more utile?
Through your worship to Councillor Blizzard, tough question for me to answer. I think as of now, we collectively had seen that there is some value for the trees. We haven't done any studies to see if they would last as development is in there, and it is a big enough section where it probably gets enough water that it probably would last. Hard to say. Is it better used for commercial? Right now I don't know that, because I don't know where the market sits today, and so we have further documents down the road that, you know, if that does change, then we'll for surely come in with an amendment. But at this point in time, we're happy with how it looks, and administration's happy with how it looks there.
You might want to ask that one when administration comes back.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go on to round 2. Councillor Nguyen.
Yeah. Question in regards to, I think there's in the green space splitting the Point of Pins subdivision, I believe there's a stormwater drain that is going to go through that area. And on the terrain maps, it shows that I think almost all of the drainage will be flowing towards what I can assume to be that one point. So how is that going to impact, I guess, the ecology of that creek? Because that could be quite a significant volume of water going in there. So can you just talk about maybe how the environmental impact assessment looked, and and so we hopefully cannot see a huge washout
No,
down
no.
to the river from there.
We've done some preliminary look at it for sure. There's going to have to be a constructed outfall in there with a proper drop structure and the proper engineering design to capture that, so there is no erosion. So we have definitely had a preliminary look at it. Some of the details will be coming out on the detailed design, but it is the only place to go for this. It's where it wants to go. We have to get to the creek and then get to the river, so it does belong there, and certainly are aware of those issues, and we'll be going through the detailed design when we get there.
So as far as you're concerned, you couldn't see that being an issue, I guess, from the province to have this entire, I think it's 148 hectares draining into one point. Then that's something that is done standard operating.
Absolutely standard. The stormwater management pond is there to collect the water, retain the water, and then discharge it at a given rate that's equal to the pre-development rate. So it's going to be controlled, it's going to be engineered, and it's going to be designed so that it's safe and reliable. So following Alberta Environment regulations, there'll have to be Water Act approval to get the outfall. So there's a process to go, absolutely. And we have looked at preliminary information about whether we can do it or not, and we can do it. So that's.
I think so. Yeah. Last question: are all street names going to be starting with P? Is that how it goes? I think that's a developer question.
Yeah, I think that's how it goes, but I don't know if we were keeping the point of pins. I think it was a placeholder. I don't know if we're keeping it yet, but it's an administration question.
Yeah, fair enough. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. That appears to be all the questions for you. So I'm just going to double check. You had nothing further. Okay, so all three names will be put on, and I think you had said that you were speaking in favor of it as well. So, okay.
Yes, thank you.
Great, thank you. So I'll have you take your seats, and I will open it up for anybody who wishes to come and speak in favor or opposed to bylaw C18-24. I'll call a second time. Okay, not seeing anybody coming to the presentation box. I'll invite administration back. And we'll just offer council an opportunity to ask any final questions. Councillor Blizzard.
Sure, I'm going to ask you the question I asked them before. So that green space in the upper right, that is, I guess, the northeast corner, that is preserving some trees. Is that also a bit flexible? Like if we end up getting to there and going, gee, it's not, and I do value, even if it's shrubs, people do like a bit of wild area to walk through, that prairie area that we have, people love walking through there. So nothing wrong with that. I'm just wondering if we determine that, the trees are dying off, can that change?
I'll maybe speak to it generally. Ms. Hart is here to provide some more technical detail, but through your worship to Councillor Blizzard, so we looked at, again, the policies within the municipal development plan, and we felt that this particular tree stand, it did have value, and it aligned with very specific policies from the MDP, and I'll just maybe speak to one or two, but one policy would state that, ensure environmentally sensitive areas or significant areas are preserved using various legislative tools such as environmental reserve easements or conservation reserves, municipal reserve, and conservation easements. So this particular tree stand, although it's, I believe it's like aspen poplar, it's not like it's an old growth forest or anything like that, but it is considered to be ecologically significant because it's of a size where it can support bird habitats and such. Once a tree stand shrinks to be a certain size, then you have to consider the edge of that tree stand and what happens inside of it. So it is of that size where it is, it has some ecological significance. So there was some importance to it. There are also other policies which align with that, but I won't get into the details of that. But I'll turn it over to Ms. Hart to see if she has any.
Yeah, good afternoon. Through your worship to Councilor Blizzard. Yeah, so just continuing on with the health of the forest that's there currently. It's young enough that if there was to be some tree mitigation within that that MR area, we believe that it would bounce back and be able to sustain itself.
Excellent. Yeah, good to hear. I just wanted to make sure that it was looked at. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Harris.
I should have asked this earlier, but the intersection that will ultimately be constructed when we get to that point at Wilshire Boulevard and Willow Link, how do you envision that, the context of that intersection? Because that's going to be a major road, and obviously it's going to generate a fair amount of traffic through there, both from the development to the west and the development to the north. And it's kind of a tricky area right now anyways. Do you have any thoughts on that from a kind of an operational standpoint, long-range planning?
Through your worship, Councilor Harris, I'll try to comment on this. I won't disagree with you. I think that being one of the north, like a collector road that would that is going into the neighborhood, that you would see some probably larger traffic issues. I don't know the traffic impact assessment numbers offhand, so I probably can't comment more to it. But I would think there probably would be some more. You would probably see some more impact to that in that intersection for sure.
Mr. Schaefer, did you want to add to that?
Your worship, Councilor Harris, I think given the location of the intersection, how it ties in, you'll see more traffic actually probably come from the north to the south rather than back up. And as we get into the details of that, we'd have to look at what the traffic patterns are looking like and what we're projecting to see what intersection treatment would be the best for that area, whether it turns into an all-directional stop or a roundabout or lights, which I doubt we'd get that far, but that would be the things we'd look at the time of closer to the development when we get into the neighborhood structure plan areas.
Yeah, obviously I asked that question because it is a bit of a kind of an interesting intersection at the present time in terms of sight lines. And obviously the land to the south, there's an elevation change, which obviously will have to be cut down, I would imagine. So ultimately it's on the list to look at from a transportation approval standpoint, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, good. That's good enough.
Okay, thank you. So that appears to be all of the questions. We have gone through the public hearing process. So with that, I will close the public hearing at 2:52, and thank you, administration, for being here. And the next steps will be that this will go to the EMRB for the ref review. So thank you very much. Are there, we'll move on the agenda. Are there any notice of motions? Okay, thank you. Are there any points of interest? Not seeing any. Any inquiries of council to administration? Okay, so not seeing any, then I will take a motion to go in camera for the items that have been presented under FOIP. Councillor Macon.
I'll make the motion that we move in camera for the items that have been selected under FOIP.
All right, thank you. Please cast your vote. And that is carried unanimous. We will go to the committee room for in camera.